Sure thing. The YouTubes, as it were.
There we go. I think we're live on Facebook.
Okay, so
And we're back.
Hello,
A little
everyone.
Technical funness with computers. I love laptops. They're great.
Yeah.
I'm John Caspian. Again, you probably know me, but if not, you do now.
now we do.
And of course, Elliot.
Yeah. So, John, you were wanting to talk about one of your character building,
Yes.
adventures
Yes.
for this upcoming
So
campaign.
I have played Dungeons & Dragons 2 or 3 times, and I've never played a ranger character.
Okay.
And so I thought, okay, how do I make a twist on a ranger that is fun, a little bit unique? It's difficult because you only have the 2 archetypes, which we'll get into in a second. But I thought to myself, what would be a cool shtick to have as a ranger in our campaign? And what I came down to deciding was I wanted a dwarf ranger
Okay.
who's a hill dwarf rather than a mountain dwarf, riding a bear. as his
Okay.
companion.
Excellent.
Now, that's not necessarily an option at the beginning,
Well, yeah.
but
'cause
fluff-wise,
you gotta build up to it.
yes.
Nobody starts off riding a bear in a day.
Right, right. So it's gonna start off with like a mastiff, some other kind of large dog, or like a panther or something like that.
For game fairness sake,
Right.
you're not gonna get
Right.
like an awesome companion.
I think you get a bear like level 15.
it's far along. but
It's pretty far along. Yeah,
But
you certainly don't get it right away.
the ultimate goal
Right.
is to reach a
Right.
character that rides a bear.
Right, right. And so when you are building a character, the number one thing you want to think about is what is he like, he or she like, what is motivations, character traits, flaws, what else? Motivations, character traits, flaws, a backstory.
Yeah, backstory.
important.
I mean, you have to have like a dog in that race. You know, you have to have a reason to be there, other than I want to be an adventurer. So
Right,
their stake in the whole thing is a very important element to picking a character and then sticking to it, because you won't really develop if you don't have some sort of reason to be there.
Right, right. So this character, I believe his name is Cord, K-O-R-D, Cord. He is of a tribe, basically a tribe of people called Amillans. And then Amillans are basically animal handlers.
Okay.
And they've honed their craft over centuries. And then some sort of accident, which he caused, basically.
Invited a bunch of bears into the house.
In a sense, basically he was messing a little bit with magic and whatnot, and caused all of the animals to go crazy, and ended up killing all of the tribe, basically.
Rather traumatic.
Very traumatic. At the same time, his animal companion was fine, which is weird.
Lucky.
Right? plot twist. So the animal companion was fine, but there's a reason for it being fine.
Yeah. So it's incorporated into the story, so you have something to go on. Not just I'm a dwarf that did something terrible by accident.
So raised as a dwarf, they don't move terribly fast. I believe rangers don't necessarily get the same penalties that a dwarf. No, I guess in a sense it could help.
Your base speed starts the same, but you gain
Right.
mobility features and stuff like that
Right.
if you go down that path, with
Yeah.
feats especially.
And then because a dwarf gets your mobility does not go down if you have like heavy armor, medium armor I believe also has no encumbrance.
Yeah.
So there's certain features of being a dwarf that are really good. So what are some of the things like in your experience?
Well, it just seems like so the typical thing that you would imagine a ranger would do is go dex based. Your armor class is raised by going higher dex. By going more of a fighty strength based ranger, you don't necessarily go for the finesse weapons. So it's a different
Right.
take on what you would normally do. So with rangers, your higher stats are usually dexterity and wisdom.
Yep.
Because your casting feature is wisdom.
Right.
So if you prioritize strength over that or constitution, you can alter your playstyle accordingly.
Right. So mine is, I believe I built it 15 dex, 16 con,
So
and
you're-
then 14 wisdom, I think.
So you're prioritized in constitution, so that way you're
It's a
going to have
point buy. Forgot to mention that.
You have your point buy. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to have more health as a
Right.
ranger than you would normally, but you'll be easier to hit. But the
Right.
whole point is that you're trying to be not necessarily the sneaky ranger. You're trying to be the bushwhacker.
Right.
I'm going to jump out at you and then I'm going to brawl you.
Right. So the backstory of why he plays the way he does is that he only recently did the tribe have the accident,
Okay.
or I should say incident. Only recently did the incident happen, So, in the meantime, they were always used as guides because the current area they're in is basically the wilderness. So, being in the wilderness, there's all kinds of random things that a lot of the frontier people, if you imagine Australia, if you will, what that was like, this would be people who are kind of aboriginals already there.
So bushwhacker
in a
is
sense.
kind of like an accurate description.
Right. It's not someone who needs to sneak around because they know the area so well.
Yeah.
However, it's interesting because from a plot perspective, you don't want a character. So say you have 4 characters out of 5, or players out of 5 who are in a new environment. So we have 4 people who are in the frontier that have never been in the frontier before. The one thing I wouldn't want to do is to have the 5th person know everything about it. So what I say instead is that he is familiar with the terrain in the area as a ranger, but he doesn't have any sort of head knowledge on it.
And I wouldn't say to be worried about it in that sense, because for remembering that you're a level 1 character
Right.
is important. Because even if you wanted to say, I'm an expert in this terrain, it's like, no, you're not.
Right.
You're familiar with it.
Right.
You understand what the trees generally mean. But you're like, in terms of like how they're lively they are, whatever, you know generally where you are. But you're never going to be an expert. Like,
Right.
that's getting towards where you have like abilities and stuff tied to nature and survival and things like that that make you so you're like, all right, I'm confident where I'm at. But having somebody who has skills involved with your terrain is important.
Right.
So it's the difference between like, it's not kind of like forests and stuff really aren't like cities and things like that.
Right.
So when your dwarf has like, I assume, nature trained.
Yes.
So you would be able to make checks to know where you are and have the advantage in trying to figure out generally what you want to know.
Right.
So you're not going to be like, oh yeah, that Tree Street, yeah, that's right down the road. You're going to be like, all right, I generally know what I can do. And just like anything that takes a test, you might be wrong.
Right. Right. Because the intuition is there, and you have a gut feeling. Oh yeah. The idea of the character is that he is the one out of the 5 who is the guide of sorts. He's been hired by the Kingsmen, or the king, I guess.
Great movie.
The army, right? He's been hired by the army, so to speak, or the frontier people to show them around, basically, to let them say, okay, we're in this part of the country.
So that's your plug. That's how your character's hooked into this whole thing.
Right.
And so you have your inn right now, and that's your very base level inn. I'm being paid.
Right.
That which can evolve into a more material, like beyond the material reason.
Right.
So where you're like, this just feels like I'm doing the right thing. Or you can be doing it because you're entirely selfish. It depends on how your alignment you want to move. I personally don't like starting off with a dedicated alignment. I like to let my actions determine how my alignment goes. So I always view myself as like, all right, I'm just generally like neutral good or sometimes neutral evil. And then swing based on how the action goes.
Mine's true neutral, not from apathy, but in a sense apathy.
I mean,
Just he doesn't really. It's not important to him.
probably be pretty upset about the
Oh, the village, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The tribe, yes, because family and animals and all that. It's a terrible incident. But in terms of his actions in a given day, he doesn't judge them on, this was good for society for him. He's in the wild, pretty much all the time.
So moving into sort of the mechanics that you want to go into, so we, as a base level of a ranger, you have 2 starting off paths, right?
Right.
You have what is it? There's
Strict ranger archetype.
Yeah.
And then beastmaster archetype, which is the one I'm taking.
So you're going after the beast handler archetype, and so that path takes you down. You eventually gain abilities that will let you handle different situations, obviously because you're a beast handler, than you wouldn't have with the straight ranger archetype. Why did you choose beast handler beyond just the animal companion element?
The character's whole identity is in beast handling because the tribe was known for being guides and beast handlers in the frontier.
Okay, and so getting into a little bit more basic of a question, what is your equipment? What do you use? Do you use 2 swords? Do you use since you're
So
like a heavier guy?
Strictly speaking, in the adventure set, you have 2 short swords or 2 basic weapons. You can also take a bow, and then you get your adventurer's kit. But in my case, because this is a kind of a homebrew campaign, it's not strictly in Faerun. In this case, I'm thinking he would have dual whips.
The whips is cool.
Whips is cool. So one advantage of the whips is that we're playing square-based, so we're not playing like measuring distances. We're just amount of squares.
Yeah.
And so in that, a whip can reach 1 square over.
Yeah,
So
reach.
it's kind of like a, not medium range, but it's not a perfectly short range weapon. So he could theoretically be, I don't know if he could be behind someone with a whip and still like hit over them. I don't know mechanically how that works, but the idea that he doesn't have to be right up in someone's face.
Well, with the way that you would be able to maneuver yourself, you would allow yourself to be safer than you would if you had to run up to somebody and be in melee combat, like
Right.
exactly with them.
Right.
It also has the situation where, if you took something that might be interesting to you, would be to take some sort of levels in fighter later and take some combat maneuvers that have the ability to manipulate it with the whip.
Right.
Anyway, but that's
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
So there's 3 different ways that you can take a ranger. One of them is dual weapon, which is traditional Legolas, Lord of the Rings kind of style. Another one is defensive, which gives you +1 to your armor characteristics.
class.
And then is there 3 or 4? I know there's also the ranged one. This gives
Yeah.
you extra range. Oh, there's the 4th one, which is
Yeah, the
you can
archer one.
specialize in a single-handed weapon if you don't have anything in your offhand.
Right.
Which means
You're a
no
duelist.
shields.
Yeah, I believe the duelist
is
is
duelist.
And
So
so
I'm thinking maybe a duelist whip.
Yeah, you end up having situations where you like. So, I don't necessarily think that you have to hold so hard to necessarily those archetypes. Like if you take the defensive class, like that's perfectly fine. It makes
Right.
up also for the fact that you're not going so dex based. You would be able to use possibly a two-handed weapon as a ranger, which would be also not typically. This is also min-maxing. If you're trying to build like not necessarily a
Right.
character that's the best it could possibly be,
Right.
just a fun character to play.
Something that fits definitely how because him in party situations, I don't plan on him being terribly influential. He is more the type that is going to be strong-headed. He's going to go in. He's going to take an action that seems right. That I don't know, like morally right, but it seems like a good action, and he just kind of goes right. Because it's the same thing when you're leading a pack of wolves, for instance. The pack leader would say, "This, go, do."
Yeah.
So he's kind of has that mentality going through it. So I'm thinking in terms of his fighting skills, I want it to be a little more of him kind of being the go and not necessarily. So he might be like the platform that just sits there and shoots. So he might end up being a shooter. I don't know. What do you
Yeah,
think?
it all depends on what your goal is. But in terms of if you're going to use your main weapon being one thing, it's going to reflect how you're going to behave. So
Right.
example is that if you're going to use your bow all the time, your melee weapon ultimately becomes kind of pointless.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's a whip or a knife. Like if you're only going to use it when someone's right in your face. But if you're mainly going to be using your bow, or if you're mainly going to be going into do combat stuff, like trying to get drop in on them, using your casting ability.
Right.
Rangers have lots of pass. I would say that they're like probably the second most versatile class.
Bards being number 1, right?
Bards being number 1
Yeah.
because there are literally 3 different classes that do all of them, kind of.
Yeah. We have a bard in the party, actually.
Yeah,
Bailey.
Yeah, I have no doubt that Bailey would choose Bard.
Yep.
But you have to choose which way you're going to specialize, right? So
Right.
if you're going to be like a casty ranger, well, you're going to want to be focusing on your spells, less on your weapons.
Can you multi-class into druid as a ranger?
You can multi-class into anything.
But yeah, but I mean, so a logical extension of, not that I'm sure that I want a multi-class. I think the campaign will end up going to around level 10, I think. But if it goes past, it's great. But if I do multi-class, I think druid could be interesting.
I think that the thing to focus on, less about multi-classing, because sometimes multi-classing just isn't a good option,
Right.
Is that thinking about what your feat's going to be that really influences it. So thinking about how you have armor proficiencies as a ranger.
Right.
Well, there are feats that let you take higher tier armor proficiencies. So just because you're proficient in medium armor, that doesn't mean that you can't take a feat to become proficient in heavy armor
Right.
and being a heavy armor ranger. You're not a sneaky ranger because you lose your proficiency in stealth. You get disadvantage on stealth rolls then.
I actually, disadvantage. I don't think I focus on stealth at all.
Yeah.
Survival and, animal handling and
Right.
all that.
So you have so many different options that it just comes down to what you think that you're going to want to be doing. I personally do like the idea of taking a medium armor character, giving them the ability to take heavy armor, and then just be like, all right, like I am basically a fighter that can cast like healing spells. Like, which
Right,
you know,
it's
it's
cool.
you could do the same thing with cleric, but it just
Right.
has that different feel to it because they have different spell lists, obviously,
Right.
and you get different cantrips. So you have to choose what your favorite option is there. But
Right.
cool, it's a cool thought.
Right.
Also, when you're picking a character, I find it more flavorful to take levels based on the events of the campaign.
Yes, yes.
So if I used my bow more than I did something else, and I level up, I might take a level in ranger and focus on the range abilities, or take a level
Right.
in fighter, take the archery ability. If I already took because the way that the leveling system works, if you choose like you can't be like a level 1 fighter and take the defense buff, and you can't be like the same ranger and take the defense buff because they're the same keywords.
Right.
So they don't overlap.
Gotcha.
But you could take different ones and gain both of those abilities.
Okay.
So something interesting to think about.
Right.
Because it's kind of the same thing with like extra attack. So the class like fighter who gets extra attack at level 5. Well, you can't take paladin, go to level 5, and get an extra attack as well. So you don't.
Yeah. Right.
You only get the extra attack once.
Good to know.
Unless you're like extra attack parentheses. Like I think fighter gets like 4 attacks at a certain point.
Right.
So
right.
if they're like level 20 fighter, like you're gonna get like 5 attacks or something like that.
Right. It's good.
Anyway, yeah.
So, Beast Handler or Beast Master. Have you played or familiar with it fairly?
I'm familiar with Rangers, not necessarily the Beast Master.
I'm just curious, gameplay-wise, how interesting, because you get to command your companion.
Yeah.
When you get to certain levels, you get additional things that you can do with them.
Yeah.
When you're incapacitated, they protect you, for instance.
Yeah. Or you can watch them die horribly because it's your fault.
Yeah. Not my companion.
Yeah.
It's special.
Yeah, you don't as a Beastmaster, you end up having essentially like 2 characters.
Right.
Like it's like a character and a half.
So it's a little bit different than, say, a Necromancer, who would have a whole bunch of skeletons.
Yeah. And so your behavior changes based on just the fact that your class is its class.
Right.
Where some characters it wouldn't necessarily matter. Like you could play a paladin and a fighter, any kind of the melee-oriented classes, generally the same. But that one specifically adds like some emotional involvement with your companion. Because if you were detached from your animal, well, it would just leave you.
Especially because there's some sort of special bond there.
Yeah, that's the whole point. And so,
and normally when you have Beastmaster, if you lose your animal companion, you have to get a new one. You spend like 8 hours. You have to taming one magically.
You have to bond with
it, right?
So,
which is fine,
Yeah.
if it need be, because I wouldn't want to put the animal in situations where obviously it's going to get face smashed.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, and so you'll have situations. You'll have those moments that are meant to be a part of that class, and you picked it because of that reason. So.
Right. I like it. So going into, so we discussed the kind of backstory, the background,
some of the mechanics.
Right, some of the mechanics. In terms of the role-playing aspects, what is necessarily like? I guess different races play different ways, but is how normal is a dwarf ranger?
I would say. I mean, in terms of like outside of the game, I mean, I wouldn't say anything's really unnormal.
Right.
I mean, a tiefling ranger, I would say would probably be less common. But in terms of the plane, since it's a home world,
right.
It depends on what the world is. Or if you were like going like Faerun, generally every race can be kind of anything, and it doesn't seem clunky. Some elements of the class, some elements of the ability scores, and how it's like certain classes are just stronger and bigger than others. Like an orc ranger isn't hard to imagine.
Right.
So a dwarf ranger also not hard
too
to
bad.
Imagine.
Okay. And then going into, we talked about leveling it. No, that's most everything I was thinking of. That's really helpful in terms of building it. The other thing, I guess, is interactions with other party characters.
Oh well, that just comes down to if there's any kind of personality conflict, then
there will be.
Yeah,
there will be.
You need to handle those.
We have one cleric who is sort of a scribe, he's basically been in charge of writing down history and whatnot. He's kind of, I don't know if it's bored, I don't know, but he wants to be more influential than he has been. So he's got that aspiration there. And so the story is that we have between the two of us is that he was bullying me, my character, basically a bully in a sense.
Yeah, but
not a physical, just like, give me your change kind of bully, but other ways manipulative.
I mean, but you just had your entire family die, so I don't know if that
right,
necessarily matters anymore.
Right. Well, not now.
Get a different scope.
Right. Right. Not now. It's not necessarily important. But when we were children in the same village or town, before I ended up getting taken to this tribe, for whatever reason I was taken to the tribe. Who knows? Because you want to leave some things for a secret, But when I was taken to this tribe, before that, he was kind of bullying me. So we happen to be the two characters that kind of know each other. Not really, because we were both kids, right? But there's still a little bit of that.
I remember that.
You. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, in terms of party conflict, the idea is that even if it's negative in nature from the characters, that you handle it well and you let it develop you,
Right.
rather than taking it personally. Like, you can have those elements, and typically, you wouldn't have those elements with somebody that you disliked,
Right.
in real life.
Oh,
You'd-
right.
you
Right.
know,
You would
you would only be
hopefully
play-
you wouldn't
yeah,
play
you
a
wouldn't-
campaign with people you didn't like.
And so as long as you don't, let it ruin the session, right?
Right.
Like any role playing stuff.
In my opinion, when I'm playing, conflict is good in terms of opposing decisions, things that, interested parties, I'm interested in this outcome, you're interested in that outcome. How do we resolve it? Do we do it diplomatically? Do we kind of
The element,
fight a little bit?
The whole point is the element of choice, right?
Right.
And if you end up in a situation where there is no choice, then there is no point
Right.
in continuing that conversation or that issue. So, like, if an example is that, like, you don't like that scribe dude because you think he's a nerd and you just don't like him, and
Right.
he's like the same way about you. It's like, well, then there is actually no point.
Right,
in
why are
going
you
forward.
playing?
Yeah, it's like, well, there's no point in even talking about it. You might
Right.
as well just move on to the next topic,
Right.
or whatever, because you won't resolve anything.
Right.
And so the whole point is to make sure that there's, like, resolvable conflicts.
Okay. Yeah.
That would be my personal choice.
Would that be something that I talk with the other player about? Or
Well,
is that just kind of
You could
have the
probably
intention of
notice in the
Right.
game of, like, the situation is like, well, I don't like that idea, and they're like, well, I don't like your idea, and it's like, we have realized that the situation's not going to get any better.
Right.
So maybe we need somebody outside to make that decision. So you'd have, like,
Careful of the table.
you'd have like third party member over here make the
Right.
decision of which way to go.
Yeah. Come on, guys. Get your stuff together.
Let's go, because you never want to split the party.
Right. No.
You know,
We
that-
did that
we-
one time recently.
Yeah, I mentioned
It was a mistake, but we
Yeah.
did.
Like the game that Mark and I played this last weekend,
Uh-huh.
we split the party, and Mark died.
Right.
So we learned that lesson.
Right.
That when we split the party, Mark's character dies. But that's not the point.
And it's funny because, like, a DM can always suggest not to, but if you want to, you can typically do it.
I mean,
Sometimes the
it's
DM
not-
will say no.
The GM's job is not necessarily to parent you.
Right. Right. It's to kind of guide the adventure in a fun way. It's true.
Well, it's like, is there anything else you want to talk about that, or do you want to move into the next topic of
The next part.
D&D Beyond?
Yes. Yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know, D&D Beyond launched last week, and it is a great asset. So we've been talking all about these characters and character creation and different elements. Well, D&D Beyond is the online, helpful tablet, phone, whatever electronic device that you might want that is really helpful to have around to help build characters, do homebrew, stuff like that. It's meant to be a useful tool, so that way you don't have to look for stuff all the time. I myself was probably going to pick up the digital copy of the Player's Handbook right away,
Nice.
just to be able to look up rules for quick notice.
Right.
You can download the spells because we have all
sweet.
these, we have all these tools and stuff like that already. Like we have the cards, which I like all of the
There
accessories.
are
that they have.
third-party apps, but they're not great.
I like the way Wizards handles things.
Great.
So,
Great.
with the way that they have all these tools and stuff for you physically right here and now, you have the cards and everything that you would need, and now you have extra access to stuff that you can have help.
So if I look up at the Play Store, it would be called
D&D Beyond.
D.
And so you can log in through Twitch, I believe, is what you have to do.
Oh, nice.
And so that way you can have some accessories.
Dragon
that way.
Plus?
No, it's like I've been having a hard time finding it on my phone, but I know that you can find it on desktop.
Okay.
So I found it on desktop, and I'm sure that once you log in, you can be able to find the correct app.
Right.
Especially because it's brand spanking new.
Okay, so it might be on their beta in a sense.
Well,
So-
they're done with the beta, and they've actually released it. The way you can do
Okay.
it is they have a big package of everything. So you could buy every supplement and everything that came out for Dungeons and Dragons for 5th edition for $280.
Okay.
And that's every class, everything, every expansion, all the spells, even sub races, path options, all of it.
Sweet.
And so it's really useful, and you can pick and choose. So you don't necessarily have to buy everything. You can buy just the classes, or you can buy just the paths that you want. I think they're $2 for a specific thing, and then it's like
Okay.
you can buy like $5 for like the deal. To
So
get
like you could
everything
get
in that
$2 for
core
your
category.
Ranger.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So you'd be able to pick all that stuff up, and it becomes a really useful tool to have.
Sweet.
They're cheaper than buying the books all over again. I would just want it to have as an accessory to my game. It's D&D. You gotta have
Right.
the books.
Right.
So,
And I'm personally the type that I need to have the book.
Yeah.
Like I want to be able to hold it.
But the idea of the app, and I think it is a very effective one, is that you can have the things that you need for quick reference, like the player's handbook or something that you don't want to necessarily flip through for 15 minutes. You can just quick search with what keyword you want, and it pops it right up. Really handy.
Nice.
Really interested in seeing how it integrates. I haven't really used it yet, but it's the news, and that's what it's supposed to do. So when it comes out and when everybody's got it or everyone has access to it and checked it out, we'll get some reviews, and I would like to know people's opinion about it.
Right.
Because I'm gonna try it and see how I feel. So I'd like to know other people's experiences, because these things can be kind of buggy sometimes. So we'll see what happens.
Nice.
So. Other than that, D&D news. So, Tomb of Annihilation.
That's right.
Coming out in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. It's going to come out
almost here.
September 7th. It's right after Dragon Con. And so,
Funny enough.
yeah, right?
Dungeons and Dragon Cons.
Well, it's no dragons this time. It's zombie dinosaurs.
Right. Well, they could be considered a form of dragon because they're lizards and they're large.
Dinosaurs are dinosaurs, and don't you break my heart.
It's true. You're right. You're
That
right.
T-Rex is going to not be a dragon.
If you put wings on it, it's suddenly a dragon, though, right?
I guess you're fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Now, how would you put wings on it? You could cast a spell. Level 9.
A necromancer doesn't know how to put wings on things, huh?
No.
Just stick them on there.
I guess you
You
could.
just stick the bones on there.
Yeah.
It's not gonna fly. It's just gonna have bones
Just
on.
have, bony wings.
Yeah.
You're giving me ideas here. I
Yeah,
like
right.
this.
So the big deal too is that the thing officially releases the book on that Friday, but the Wednesday Night Adventure League will have its module available. So reserve your
Sweet.
spot today, so that way you can get your hands on an early access ability to play Tomb of Annihilation.
I like it. Sweet, man. Awesome. Well, thanks for talking to me today.
No problem, John.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah,
And
of
Mark was
course.
great. I appreciate you giving us the
He's
time.
right behind us.
Oh, well, yeah. So we had a great talk about Princes of the Apocalypse, and next week we're going to be talking about Unleash the Demon. It's
Nice.
the demonic book that
right.
came out. So we'll be talking about a different theme, no longer elemental evils or dragons. We're moving on to demon stuff.
Sweet. Let me go get this while you get your last.
Sure thing. Yeah, and feel free to check us out. I'm Elliot from That's a Free Action. Check out my YouTube channel where I've got stuff talking about barbarians right now, and we're moving into bards. So if you want some more specific bite-sized information about classes and stuff, feel free to check out my channel. My video of Barbarian launched last week, and I've been getting good results from that. So feel free to leave a comment or anything like that. I'm Elliot.